Hey King, thanks for clicking on the video. On today's episode of Chronicles of the Lolcows, we are going to be taking another look at Jason Blaha in his video titled Chivalry and Behaving as a Gentleman in Public, My Black Eye. I've personally been on a bit of a Jason Blaha kick recently. He's just one of my favorite little internet goobers, and this video in particular is an absolute gem. Back when this video was uploaded on June 27th of 2015, Jason was a much different man than the man that you will see currently if you visit his channel today. 2015 Jason was an alpha who had a mysterious past of working for the United States government as a mercenary, where he fought in the powder wars down south. He was an all-world athlete who had a significant martial arts background that he absolutely would not go into detail on for tactical reasons, of course.
Now, let me answer another question up front. I get asked this a lot. People always say, oh, you've mentioned you have a martial arts background. Why don't you talk about the details? Will you please talk about the details? And it's just like a lot of my other past. The answer is not just no, but hell no. And my reason being, just because of the nature of my own past, my own background, I tend to think very tactically. And to me, I see no advantage whatsoever since I'm not an instructor. I don't instruct martial arts at all, never have, never will. There is no reason for me to ever go into detail on that stuff. And accordingly, anytime I give out to people out there, I'm a person who gets continual death threats because of my controversial videos. And I do have to think towards the future and towards self-defense. I don't ever let people know publicly what the full extent of my operational capacity is, what the extent of any training I have is, and my fighting ability, because that's giving out free intel that gives people a possible advantage if they do want to attack me. I would much rather have people have no idea at all what my training is and what I'm capable of, and that puts me back at an advantage again in any sort of confrontation. So no, I'm not going to discuss what styles of martial arts I've studied or what sort of training or anything that I have. It puts me at a disadvantage to do so.
Now, Jason, that obviously makes no sense. Just because someone knows your operational capacity, i.e. your training, that doesn't mean that they can instantly counter you and defeat you. In fact, if you are a black belt in multiple styles of martial arts and have trained at the farm in Langley, it shouldn't matter what they know about you because you should be so good that you can defeat them regardless. The accolades do not stop there, by the way. Jason also overcame a multitude of illnesses and medical conditions, such as Meniere's disease, which is an ear condition that affects balance and such, but he was able to push through this debilitating condition due to how badass he is. Despite all of the trials and tribulations, Jason still managed to look like a slightly overweight guy who doesn't lift at all, but he could deadlift 425 pounds for several reps, which, you know what, that's actually pretty impressive. I'll still toss in a little bit of criticism that you shouldn't slam the weights like that on every single rep. Not because I'm a Karen that hates loud noises or anything. I just find it significantly more impressive if you can put the weight down in a controlled manner, as it shows that you can truly handle the weight that you are lifting. Slam it on the last rep all you want, but just don't do it on all of them. I suppose it is also appropriate to bring up Jason's immense success with women.
Quite honestly, I do pretty well. I turn women down. And I know people are going to be like, oh, you're so full of shit. That's the reality of it. That is the reality of it. It honestly isn't that hard to get women. Now, keep in mind, guys, I'm in a different demographic. I'm in my 40s. So women in my age group, people need to understand when you just look like you're muscular or in shape or anything, I am actually a reasonably big guy. I have an above average income. I have high testosterone levels due to TRT, so I mean, I probably put out pheromones and things. I do pretty well. Like I said, I do turn them down.
He puts out pheromones, guys. Just let that sink in. But it does make sense. I mean, how could he not have women crawling all over him with the previously mentioned accolades, but especially his squatting booty? I mean, that's the first part of the body that women notice after all.
Do you really think that women do not appreciate a well-developed set of quads, hamstrings, calves, and glutes? Because I can tell you, as someone who has trained these things most of my career, I got more compliments from women on those things than oftentimes my upper body, even when my upper body was much more developed than it is now that I'm older. Trust me, guys, women notice your legs. Also interesting, I recall in a psychology class I was taking many, many years ago, When the professor was asking the men in the class what they thought the research would say that women noticed first on a man's body, what part of his body they noticed first. And the guys gave the typical guesses. Guys were like, oh, the arms, the biceps, and another was like the chest. And the professor said, no, you're all wrong. Any of you know what it was? This was data conducted 15 years ago, and the number one listed body part, or part of a man's body that women noticed first in terms of sexual attractiveness, it was their butt. Not their pecs, not their arms, their butt. And what is the best way to develop a shapely, firm, toned butt? Deep squats.
I'm going to be real with you. I just straight up don't believe that this conversation ever happened in this supposed psychology class. Jason has a bit of a habit of backing up whatever he is saying with a study or research that has been done about whatever specific thing he is talking about at that point, but he never gives any sources whatsoever. So because Jason doesn't give a source, I'm going to default to my own personal experience and say that women in fact care a lot more about muscles such as abs likely being the biggest one, with arms, shoulders, and back being probably the next ones. However, I'm not a woman, so maybe I'm completely wrong and women just go feral for a good squat booty, but what I will say is that thick thighs and a big ass are things that generally attract men, and I'm going to be honest, it seems like sometimes that's the audience that Jason is trying to attract.
Okay, the last thing you want to have happen when you go to a formal occasion and you're wearing a suit and they can't always see your physique is for people to ask, does that guy even squat? So make sure that you fit your trousers in such a way that people can see your quads and your squat booty. And let me show you guys. Okay, you want them just snug enough that they can see the outer sweep of the quad, and you want them to be able to see the booty. Turn that up just a little more. Because, as I said, at the end of the day, you don't want anybody looking at you in your suit and going, does that guy even squat? Alright guys, I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you next time.
I honestly feel a bit violated after watching that video, but bro, you cannot tell me that you made that video as a heterosexual in an attempt to attract women. I just straight up don't believe you. I say all of this though to point out the fact that Jason had a bit of a habit of telling grandiose tales back in the day that made him out to be a superhuman basically. Now the internet very quickly sniffed this out and almost no one really believed his stories that he would tell, but it didn't prevent the stories from being wildly entertaining. Not really in like a whoa, this guy is super awesome sort of way, more of like a little cousin telling you a very obviously fake story kind of way. I feel like that leads us nicely into the main course of today's video, so buckle up because this one is a wild one.
Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about chivalry, and I know that's a topic that a lot of you don't like with a lot of the men going their own way stuff, but chivalry, being a gentleman, behaving as a mature adult in public, and I'm not talking about on YouTube, guys. YouTube is entertainment. We do things for entertainment here that we wouldn't necessarily do in the real world. Conducting yourself in the real world, the way that you carry yourself as a man is important. When you're entertaining people on a screen, you may not always conduct yourself in that way. So people need to learn to differentiate between the two.
I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure what the point of this opening rant was. I feel like everyone kind of knows that what you're seeing on screen for a lot of content creators is very curated. You only really see what the creator wants you to see. That applies for competent content creators at least. I mean, we have people like Boogie, who I still stand by my statement of saying he's not a real lolcow, saying that he had 3 personalities. The guy in his gaming videos who he strived to be, Francis, the guy he never wanted to become, and then him offline who is somewhere in the middle. So I don't think that anyone is confused about someone putting on an act or doing something that they wouldn't normally do for entertainment purposes in a video.
But something I do believe in is chivalry, and a lot of you guys don't like that because to me, men and women are different. I'm not saying that men are superior to women, but there are fundamental differences between us biologically, emotionally, things like that. And part of our role as men in a society is to protect the women, the children, or the weak in our society. And yes, I mentioned, because I knew people would see it, people were saying you're bragging about being in a fight. No, guys, there's no bragging about being in a fight. If you find yourself in a fist fight for whatever reason, it's not something you should be proud of.
You know what, Jason? Solid take, especially from a lolcow. I don't really have any objection to the broad point he is making here. It did toe the line of tipping my fedora to milady, but overall he's on the right track, especially with the fighting thing. My take on it is that you shouldn't be afraid to fight if someone pushes you to that point, but you should try everything to avoid fighting. So mark this down as a rare lolcow W.
These things do happen. However, what I want to discuss is that the way that I handled the situation, I conducted myself as a gentleman. And where I live in Texas, that's a very important thing. And I know that doesn't hold true in the rest of the world, but that is my culture and my society. But essentially what had happened, and you guys know that I've said before, when I go out, I generally take girls with me and I take care of them and everything. And I have a current girlfriend right now, so I'm not doing this to get laid. In fact, the friend I had with me is happily married. I'm a good friend with her. I'm a good friend with her husband. Her husband, trust me, she wanted to ride with me to go up to a bar that was having a steak night and a karaoke night that we frequently go to. A lot of us go to. A lot of my friends go there.
Yeah, okay, we fell into Redditor fedora tipping territory. Like, I usually go out with a group of women, but not to get laid, of course, but instead to take care of them and keep them safe. Yeah, okay, bud, sounds about right.
We went with a group of friends, and one of my friends, who it turned out I didn't know has a bit of a history of slapping around his girlfriends and things, his exes when he drinks, got really out of line that night. And rather than be able to enjoy myself with other friends, I had to spend a lot of time keeping this guy calmed down, trying to keep him under control. He was getting really rough. He had knocked my glasses off at one point, trying to wrestle around with me. And I kept having to calm him down. He was a friend of mine. I didn't want to have to hurt him, but he got really out of line at one point, and he kept kissing on girls. Every girl that we had there, none of them were single. All the female friends who were there either had boyfriends, husbands, whatever. He was trying to kiss on them, slap their asses. He had been asked to stop. And then he tried to kiss my married friend, and she pushed him away, and he put her in a choker hold. So I ended up having to get in a confrontation to pull him off of her, because that's going too far. This is a woman who is married. She has a husband, and she was there under my protection by me taking her to this establishment. And it was my obligation as a man at that point to step in and do something. And I would think most of the guys out there would respect that and understand that.
Now that's a very strange composition of this group that consists of Jason, several taken women, and then a random abusive friend that is tagging along. I just think it's a bit weird that none of the other women have their men with them. It might make sense for one or two of them to be tagging along in the group without their men, but just a flock of women under the protection of Jason Blaha? That's super weird. Now, I'm not going to make any excuse for the behavior of the guy that Jason is describing, but he does sound a bit cartoonishly evil in this story. Like, I don't think you could get away with acting like that for very long without getting ostracized from the group, long before you'd be able to put one of the women into a headlock, but who knows? Maybe Jason's high testosterone pheromones were making this guy act up.
And no, I didn't beat the shit out of the guy. Nobody won this conflict. Everybody involved lost. Because he and I had to grapple around, I specifically went completely out of my way to avoid punching this guy or hitting him and using submission holds. I ended up getting my arm bit. And when he bit my arm, I hooked my fingers in his cheek, which will generally paralyze somebody. You can hook them like a fish. And I put him chest down on the floor and I held him there. The bouncers were coming, and I was hoping he would be cool because the guy was my friend, or had been my friend up until that point, but he was really drunk and I wasn't thinking clearly at that point. I was trying to keep calm. I didn't realize how much pain I had put the guy in with that hold, because it hurts quite a bit. And I told him, if you're going to be cool, I will let you up. And he said he'd be cool, just please let him go. When I let him up, he came up and he caught me with the left, and he got me really, really good. And that was my own fault. That was me being stupid and assuming that my friend was going to be cool if I let him back up. And that was really dumb of me, so I paid a price for that. That's something to be proud of. That was a mistake on my part. I had the guy subdued. I should have just kept him there in the submission hold until the bouncers got there.
Now that's a hardcore fight. I really love the idea of Jason employing a fishhook maneuver that has a paralyzing effect on the guy. Now, I had never heard of this until I watched this video for the first time, and I have the same thought now that I did then. This fishhook maneuver is a horrible idea because this would get your fingers bit off. I mean, if I was in a heated fight and the other guy started putting his fingers on my mouth, you bet your ass I'm biting them. Besides how easy it would be to get hurt trying this, it's also just gross, and there are much easier ways to restrain someone. He used the word grappling, implying jujitsu. There's about 1,000,000 ways to restrain someone in jujitsu. I mean, just put the guy in an arm bar and tell him if he doesn't want his arm broken, he should relax. That still isn't super realistic, but it's a lot more believable than sticking your fingers in someone's mouth and then instantly paralyzing them. But I am forgetting this is Jason Blaha that we're talking about here, the super soldier who trained at the farm in Langley, so it probably does have a paralytic effect when he does it.
When the bouncers came over and the owner got in my face, who happens to be a personal family friend of mine, I backed off, let the bouncers deal with him, and I didn't continue the conflict. I kept my cool because, again, it's important to behave as a gentleman in public. You shouldn't have to have bouncers pull you off someone, even if you've had to restrain them. When the owner of an establishment comes and tells you to back off, you back off. And you apologize to that person for whatever behavior you were involved with in their establishment, guys. And that's part of being a gentleman and being a man, is to know when to back off in those situations and to apologize to everyone involved. And I went around that night, and every one of our friends who were there, who had to see all of that, who had to deal with it, I apologized to each and every one of them. I apologized for his behavior, and he and I are no longer on speaking terms. So no, that's not something to brag about. It's not something to be proud of. I'm not proud of the fact that I had to get into a conflict. I'm not proud of the fact that I made a mistake and let somebody up who I shouldn't have and got a black eye for it, guys. But there are times when these things arise, and it is important for us as men to deal with them as men when these situations come up. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.
Obviously, the owner of the bar is a family friend due to how well connected that Jason is. It's just really funny to me. But it's interesting that the story wraps up just like that. Nothing else comes of it. He apologizes to everyone, and we all move on. It sounds about right. There's a bit of a theory in the Blaha community that due to the very obviously fake aspects of the story, much of the events he described are made up to make Jason look like the hero, when in fact, the real reason he had the black eye and the bite mark was maybe because he ran into a real veteran. This was around the time that he was getting in hot water for stolen valor. Or maybe he was, hitting on a woman at a bar and her man gave Jason the old 1-2. Or even yet, his girlfriend at the time, Moon Cookie, might have got a little rough with him when they had a dispute. I personally put my vote on Moon Cookie being the culprit just because of the bite mark. That seems like an attack that she would employ in her arsenal, but the world will never truly know the story behind Jason's black eye. That is going to do it for me, however. I do hope you enjoyed. I have a couple of pretty long videos in the works. Coming up next, we'll have another episode of Biology of a Lolcow. I won't give away the topic yet, but we do also have something going over Chris Chan in the works, so stay tuned. I'll see you all in the very near future. Have a blessed day, and peace out.